for a licensed contractor, Denton Quality Construction.
Make a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Opposed? All right, the agenda is adopted. We need to approve the hardships.
Make a motion to approve the hardships.
I've got a motion.
Second.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. We need to approve the minutes and the transcript from the July 24th, 2018 meeting. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
And a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Moving on to license approvals. We had a bunch of waived files. We have a motion to approve those.
Move for approval of the waived files.
And a motion.
Second.
And a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right.
I move that we approve for the interview, the revisions, the LLE, LLP, and HI, unless it's a special
Okay.
report.
I second that.
All right. All those in favor of doing that? Say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I think we have some recommendations for the LLE that will be denied.
Okay. So we're going to approve all of them except the ones that are denied or whatever. So we'll start with Andy if you've got some that we need to.
I do. I have two that file 6541 and file 46006. They both are applying to renew an LLE license that's been expired, and they have either one doesn't show any work history in the past 10 years in the electric trade. So I recommend that they retake the LLE electrical exam.
Okay. All right. Do we need to approve that or anything?
Just read them all and then approve them all at once.
Okay. The LLPs were all fine. Were there some home improvement?
Yes. Got some home improvements. This was one I got in between meetings. It's a new applicant. This applicant was, their experience was mountaintop contractors. They've done work in Virginia, but all of their work was site work, land clearing, septic systems on all the jobs, and they're applying for a home improvement license. And I'm, by way of thinking from this application, and I don't think we've gotten any further information, that they're thinking they can get a home improvement license and go use it to their intention for the license was to do a development. So I'm recommending, it is Cedar Branch Excavating, LLC, and I'm recommending that we deny that license and that they apply for a proper contractor's license on that,
Or show us some experience.
or show some. Then this is a reinstatement for 7011 is the license application, and in this application they listed jobs in excess of $3,000 while they were unlicensed, while they were in expired state. So I'm recommending that we pursue a consent order of $1,000 for contracting without a license or on an expired license. That's all the home improvements.
Anybody have any other interviews or anything that?
I've got one interview that was for a home improvement license. They had done work in excess of $3,000 in a home improvement county. So I'm recommending approval of the home improvement license for $1,000. be for D&M Construction, 8914.
Okay. Did you have any interviews that you want to present? So I guess I'll make a motion that we approve all applications. You got one more?
I've got a couple more.
Okay,
This
I'm
is
sorry.
on the other side. This comes from the July meeting. Jerry had approved it, but it is George V. Ginn General Construction. I'm not certain exactly what the civil penalty was for, but it's a $500 civil penalty.
Unlicensed activity.
Unlicensed activity. We're going to hold the increase for 6 months. He's got a BCA and a BCD small commercial. License number is 31354. So I'd like to put that in to be included. And then I've got one other. This was a new application, and the contractor admitted to flipping houses, interviewed him. He was doing it from the realty side of the business. He was a masonry contractor, got into build his own house. Then he sold that house and got into the idea that he could make money flipping houses, and thought he was fine doing it without a license. And so I'm recommending $1,000 penalty of contracting without a license, and then approve, probably go ahead and issue the license once the civil penalty was satisfied. That is Hayes Contracting, license number 72675.
Okay. Any more? Is that it? So I guess we need a motion to approve all the applications, including the revisions or the ones that were denied as presented by the board members.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Opposed? All right. Okay, we've got some folks from the Home Builders Association. Susan, are you guys ready?
We're ready. We'll introduce ourselves for the record. I'm Susan Ritter, Executive Vice President of the Home Builders Association of Tennessee.
I'm Alan Van Ly with Noble Knights Construction, and I'm the president of the HBAGK here in Knoxville.
I'm Ashley Burnett, the Executive Officer with the Home Builders Association of Greater Knoxville.
And what we'd like to talk to you about a couple of things. First is the unlicensed building, and Alan can speak to that a little bit. It's harder and harder every single year, and we've got to figure out a way to stop it. And I've expressed this to the board before. My biggest concern is that house is then sold to someone that's unaware that it was built by someone that was unlicensed. And it goes on and on and on. So Alan can speak to some current things, and Ashley, and then we'll move forward.
Yeah, I kind of brought this up at a local level in 2016. I probably had the best year I had since I started my business, and we were recovering from the economy. And in 2017, I quoted 17, I'm a custom home builder, quoted 17 houses and got 0. And I'm sitting there going, geez, how did we build 8 the year before and had the most ever? And started doing some homework, and all these guys resurfaced that maybe used to have a license or were never in the business at all, and they're convincing the client to go pull their own permit, and they're doing everything we're doing for them for a fraction of the percentage of the fee. So we started, getting beat 50, 80, 100,000 on houses, and that's where they're beating us. Now they don't have, it trickles down to the subcontractors now don't have to be, have workers' comp and general liability. They're not subject to the insurance audits. The client is qualified for some reason to pull their permit if it's their own house. So I think it's a twofold problem. We know the guys can't be out there acting from a legal standpoint as contractors. Now, we already have that, but we don't have the enforcement in place really to get the abundance of them. So we were thinking locally in our local governmental affairs and talking to some of the other associations in East Tennessee that maybe it's the client we have to get to have some sort of certifications. Maybe they have to do a 2-hour online class, and they have to certify as a contractor for this one project, and that we have to make them subject to the insurance audits, and even going all the way down to sending out 1099s for the people who they're paying, because when you get a construction loan for yourself, if Mr. Electrician wants a $1,000 discount to go give them cash, you can just drive to the bank and hand them cash. But I can't do that as a company because I get audited for my books every year, and the I can give them the cash, it's not going to be hidden. They're still going to get taxed on it. So there's all kinds of levels of flying under the radar with the issue, even down to the homeowners who say they're doing it for themselves, build a house, and in 6 months they sell it, and then their wife can pull the next permit. And so the one permit every 2 years really isn't even working to catch the homeowner who's doing it for business as well. So, and then like Susan was saying, it is a consumer protection issue, because your house should be certified when you're selling it in the market if it was built by a licensed contractor, and who that was maybe. And if we get the real estate side behind that and give some value to that professionally built home, that would also help. So we don't know on our side what the legalities are, what the enforcement could be, how we could change this. Obviously, we can only enforce it in the counties that have code enforcement to begin with, if we did it from the permitting side, because we have a lot of counties where we don't even have that. But just wanted your thoughts and ideas and experience with this topic, and where do we kind of go from here to help be in a fair market for the contractors.
And we talked about you build it, and are you build or you build it?
You build it, the letter U, build it. It's I guess a franchise organization or company in quite a few states. And I think we have a case open with you from earlier this year. Susan had started that conversation with Carolyn, but similar to what Alan was saying, essentially that group is acting as an unlicensed contractor, even though they have a business model that they're following. I think it's a new issue with you all that they've applied for a license, but I don't think they have one right now. But essentially, they are acting as unlicensed contractors, superintendents for these homeowners, and it can be a tricky situation, because I've talked about it with other builders and realtors, and it's not that we're necessarily wanting to prevent a homeowner from being their own contractor if they legitimately are intending to build that house, live in it, it's their family home. But we know people kind of circumvent that, like Alan was saying, and essentially flip the house later. So it's got some gray area there as well. But yeah, you build it as they came to our attention. They wanted to be on our show, and we've known about the issue through Alan's experiences, and we know that there are others that deal with that too, but they seem to have that unfair advantage where they're not following all the requirements that a licensed contractor like Alan and others have to do.
Are they acting as a construction manager?
Essentially, that's
how
what
they're presenting themselves. Yeah.
Then they're violating our law. Can we not put a stop to that?
You all have already fined them and told them to get a license, and so they're in the process of getting a license now.
Well, they're still advertising. Should we not put a cease and desist on their operations until they get their license?
Yes, you certainly can.
Is that something you can't do straight from your desk?
Do it.
I would like to make a motion that the board directs Carolyn to send an order of cease and desist to You Build It, and for further future uses, any other company or firm that acts as a construction manager that is unlicensed, that we go ahead and issue an order of cease and desist until they become licensed, that they not continue operations.
What about the houses that are under construction right now by them?
They're going to be in trouble with the homeowners, aren't they?
Well, and that's one topic that we were discussing earlier. The average consumer actually doesn't know that we should be licensed to build their house. So it's not like the engineer and the architect stamp, and if there were a way to give us some credibility, and make it known that you need to hire someone licensed to do this. And that's why, you know, you guys, the state doesn't have the enforcement available to catch. I mean, you could just go out here from the fires and get 20 of them today that are project managers, and the permits are pulled by the homeowner.
The problem is the state has taken upon itself to issue ads all across the state. I've seen it, talking about hiring a licensed contractor, making sure you use a licensed contractor. But when people refuse to listen,
To do it, yeah, sure.
then where you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink.
Right.
And that's what's happening. If people choose to take that unlicensed route, then we really can't do anything about it. I see it happening up in East Tennessee every day.
Yeah.
And you know,
And that's
like
why
you said, there's no enforcement, and we just have to live with it until we can.
Well, and that's why we were discussing locally in our governmental affairs, instead of trying to enforce it, find these guys, if the client or the homeowner had some sort of credentials to become a contractor, even if it's that one time, then those guys get wiped out too, because at least somebody's following the rules along the way.
I think we're going to have to go the legislative route on that.
Okay.
And I think what's going to have to happen there, and this was discussed, is we need a homeowner affidavit. Make it 10, 20, 30 pages long, and describe all the rules, all the requirements that's required of a licensed contractor. Make sure that they understand that they are acting as the contractor. I'm not a legal person, so we'd have to have somebody write this up, but have them initial every single line throughout that affidavit. When they go apply for that permit, they have to fill that out, they have to answer those questions, they have to make sure that they're willing to take all of that risk on. Once they've done that, then we've pretty much resolved and washed our hands of any responsibility for the work that they've got done that may be incompetent. They're made aware of it. So from that point on, then they've assumed the liability and responsibility of that house. Now, through the legislation too, it could be noted that on the title of that property, that it was a homeowner-built home. So it could go into the real estate report, and to address any of Susan's concerns, that the next homeowner would be flagged and warned that it was a homeowner-built home. And they may not be able to just expect that home to be built to code. And that could be written that way. Home was not built by a licensed contractor, and buyer beware. I don't know how to properly word it, but the legal people would do it. But short of that, I don't know how we can enforce it, because your homeowner is going to say, I've got the right to go build my house ever how I want to.
But they don't have the right to go hire a superintendent to oversee the job and approve the bills and approve the draws and all. That's construction management.
And that could be in that affidavit that I'm speaking of.
Well, and
That once they take that step, there's where they are. That person needs to be licensed. If you're hiring someone to do this, then that person will need to be licensed. They'll have to initial it. And then if they do that, then legislatively, if we do that properly, that homeowner's violated the law. If they've hired a construction manager because they violated the law.
Maybe in that document they're certifying they didn't
license.
hire somebody else.
But there is another law that says we can't go after the homeowner, so that would have to.
Well, and in Knox County, we've seen the affidavit that you're talking about, or similar, you know, that you would talk about for the state, where it's there in black and white, and the homeowner does sign off on that. I don't know how big. I mean, several
It's like
sheets.
I don't even know if it's more than a page.
Right. But so
It
that they
needs
have
to be
some.
more comprehensive.
I guess it does, and
But on the note that the homeowner has the right to build their own project, in the city of Knoxville, if it's more than $3,000 or $5,000, it says you cannot. You have to hire a professional.
Right.
So in the city, they already have that guideline. And no one ever kicked around about that. I don't know how long that's been in.
No.
But I think this comes as a directive from the state legislature, and it was written into law. And therefore, then the local codes department had to carry it
Correct.
as
That's
part
what
of
we
their
need.
permitting procedure. Then we start resolving some of those issues. We're not gonna get them all.
No.
We're still never gonna get them all. But once we start resolving that, and we call it to that homeowner's attention, that if the minute he hires a subcontractor or a construction manager that is unlicensed, he has violated the law and will be responsible for penalties, then that'll stop them from that. It'll stop them from hiring a U-Build that's not licensed. Because they need to verify, you need to verify your construction manager is licensed. If not, then you are in violation of Tennessee Code annotated, whatever that law would be, yourself. So they'd be violating the law. The construction manager would be violating the law. You know, if we put it back on the homeowners a little bit, we can stop some of this too. It'd be just like driving down the road without your driver's license. Okay, maybe not exactly the same, but if you see what I'm saying, they've got a little responsibility, a little skin in the game, then they're not going to take that chance and make the penalties large enough, you know, that if they get caught doing it, you know, it hurt. I don't know how we can do that, and I don't know if we can get the legislative support. That's where the home builders has to come in.
Sure. Yeah.
And you know, it's probably not so much commercial is not a problem because you've got bidding processes and architects and everything that oversee that. But in the residential side, that's the problem. So I think if we put a little bit of it back on that homeowner, make it where they're violating the law as well, then we've got something to go with.
And do we have your permission to work with Carolyn, take a look at what Knoxville already has in place, grow it probably, and create something like that that we can take to the legislature, probably not this next session, probably in 20. Is that?
We could bring it back to the board.
Oh,
in
absolutely.
November.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or maybe not back to,
Or, yeah.
because it can't, well, yeah, I would think it would be later at this coming session. And our board would have to approve us moving forward as well.
Sure. I mean, you're
So
gonna have to
it wouldn't be in
you're gonna
this
have to get a broad base of support.
So well, I guess what I'm saying is you might not see it in November, you might
It's
not
gonna
see
be
it
tough
until.
because legislation, yes, is controlled by rural representatives, and the rural representatives want the people building together on that.
Oh, and you mean in the areas that don't even have codes?
Well, we suggested that if it's a code enforcement and it's part of the IRC, it's not going to hit those rural areas because they don't have code enforcement. And we understand there are plenty of areas you can't find a builder to build your house. I mean, they just don't exist in places.
Tie it to insurance or something. But anyway, we'll work on it and come back to you.
Well, another question I have is, what is your, being on the board that you guys are on, your experience you have, your opinion of the $1,000 fine? Like, we just sat here and heard some examples. A guy flipped some houses. After he pays $1,000, he gets a license. My opinion on that is, if I got away with flipping 6 or 8 houses and then I had to pay $1,000 for all that profit, I'd write you a check for $1,000 on every house to not have a license, which I know you can't continue. But it doesn't seem like the $1,000, if we're going to write this affidavit to the homeowner, is enough of a scare as a fine for breaking these laws.
We certainly handed out larger fines. I've handed out several $5,000 fines myself. I think each board member reviews each case on its own merits, and we make a recommendation, how egregious is it? And we make those recommendations.
It depends on how many, I think this guy had 3, and maybe one was his own residence. And
So
so
really
maybe
2.
he really only had 2, and maybe he just had 1.
He had to.
Okay, so,
And plus he's getting a license, so
and he's getting a license
that makes a
today.
difference.
Yeah.
Okay, the one other thing I wanted to mention is our association, again, is discussing continuing education on the residential side. And I wanted to make sure y'all were good with that. I still have to have work to do. We have to approve it through our Government Affairs Committee and then our full board that meets in November. And that could happen as soon as this legislative session. Are we good with it? Will we have your support? I'm not speaking for AGC or ABC, although I made them aware we're moving forward. I guess I want your blessing for us to move forward, and we'll need your support.
As a home, I'd have to see what it said. As far as just a blanket, how often do you do it? Is continuing education, is it a 3-year term? Are you grandfathered in? Is it small residential? Is it over $1 million? I need to see the guidelines before we just blanket.
To throw a thought in on that, Susan, and I'm saying this sitting on your side of the fence, but going back again to if now I'm going to do continuing education and be more educated and spend the money to do it, now the homeowner is less qualified to build their own house, but we're allowing them to do so. So at what point does it become I can't walk in the doctor's office and write my own prescription because it's on me? Where does the homeowner start and stop in all this? And we want more qualifications, so continuing education is great, but now I'm further separated from the guy who can actually go get a $3 million permit on a house because it's his. He's nowhere near qualified to put that structure up.
He's going to hire somebody.
We would certainly hope.
That'll be a violation.
Well, a good portion of this is going to be you all promulgating the rules that support the continuing ed legislation. I don't think all of the details will be in the legislation. Anyway.
You think it's going to have to go through rules through this board to require continuing education?
Yeah, a part of it will, yes.
I mean, like for our renewals, we would have to have documentation of.
Well, you're going to have
Once the
to.
law is passed, the board would be responsible for deciding how to implement that law change.
Guidelines.
That would be a responsibility to fall on the board.
What she said.
What she said.
What I said.
Any more
So you'll have
discussion?
control. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Any more
On the
discussion?
basic idea, I'm all for continuing education. I think everybody knows that. And I just think it's a need. I've gone through several continuing education courses myself, and it's like opens your eyes. But really, I forgot about that or didn't know that. And I think as a contractor, everyone across all trades needs a certain amount of continuing education. So.
Especially when it comes to schools.
All right, any other discussion around that? What about the Go Build report? Are you doing that too?
That would be me. We're doing great. I know there was conversation about Go Build out of California that doesn't exist any longer, but we licensed ourselves through Alabama that had somehow ownership of the name. So I think for $1 we have the name. David McGowan, a developer builder out of Middle Tennessee, is going to be the new president of the board. We have, we're in the middle of hiring a new grassroots person, and that grassroots person is doing, and the current one, we had to leave, is doing an amazing job doing workshops all over the state. I don't know how she did it. She was everywhere. And that's the important part, getting into schools, getting into the career fairs. We have coming up in Middle Tennessee at the Adventure Science Center, Touch a Truck, where we have contractors bringing in heavy equipment, big vehicles, and then students get to climb all over them, get in them, get to see how it feels, but it's a whole another education. They also have inside the joysticks and everything that they can simulate what's going on. We're in good shape. We're in very good shape. We were a little worried, but we came through it, I think, better for us, and financially way better for us. So that's about that report. We're in a good place, and you'll get more financial details at your next meeting. Anybody have any questions about that?
All right, thanks, Susan.
You're welcome.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having us.
Legal report.
All right, starting with Dennis Gregory for the agency, starting with number 19 on residential complaints, 2018-047111. Decision is to close that matter. Number 31, 2018-044701. Decision is to close. Number 67, 2018-050071. The decision is to issue a letter of warning. Number 79, 2018-018841. Decision is to reduce the penalty, civil penalty to $1,000 conditioned on the retirement of the license. Number 82, 2018-005001. New decision is to reduce previous civil penalty to $8,000. Number 93, 2017-016421. Recommendation may have been to discuss, and the new board decision is to dismiss. Number 94, 2018-020301. The recommendation for discussion and the new board decision is to impose a $1,000 civil penalty. And then over on home improvements, number 10, 2018-032781. Recommendation was for a $500 civil penalty. It's going to be increased to a $1,000 civil penalty. And then numbers 19, 20, and 21. This will cover complaint numbers 2016-030471, 2016-030472, and 2016-030473. The recommendation is to close. And that concludes the report.
Make a motion to accept the legal report.
Motion.
Second?
That's
Residential or is
Is that all of it? Do we have any on the?
There were no other changes on commercial or plumbers or electricians.
That covered it.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of accepting the legal report as presented?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, legal report's good. So Carolyn, on this owner supply materials and labor, can you update us on what that's, we reviewed that last time, did we not?
So we tabled it at the July meeting. I think we first brought it up in the May meeting.
Okay.
So Keith, if I can ask you to kind of explain your position on what you would like changed in the initial definitions for electricians. Because I know when I spoke with Andy, he had a difference of opinion on what should actually be changed. And so before I move forward on either one, I kind of need to know where the board wants to go with it, and we can take it from there.
Well, I think the issue that was brought up to me was that LLEs were bidding jobs. Owners were furnishing the materials, LLE could go up to 25,000 on the job, labor-wise, but then the owners were furnishing material over that limit. So therefore, that's putting that contractor actually contracting that job over his license limit, even though the owner's furnishing the materials. So what I was wishing or hoping that we could do was limit the LLE to bidding a job or completing a job at 25,000, his license limit period, materials and labor. I think that was what the board's original intent was in that.
Right, so that reflects the May conversation. And after that, when I began drafting the rules, so you'll see two different versions of the rules. The first amendment was to 0680-3. And what I did there was I kind of put Keith's language under the definitions to say that no electrician can bid or contract on a job over 25,000. That includes material provided by the owner. But in discussion with Andy, I think he feels that may single out the electricians a little bit, and he proposed a change to a different portion of the rule where it would affect all contractors. You correct me if I'm wrong, Andy.
That's 100% right, yeah. So right now, the way that previous rule that she just read was that singles out LLEs only. Well, the LLPs can still do it. So if we change it in this other spot, then it includes all licenses. So if you look at the last one here,
the one Andy's referring to is the second set, which is 0680-01 -.13 subpart 8, which states that no contractor shall engage in any project that would exceed his license limitation. That includes materials provided by the owner. So it's the same language, it's just whether it affects only electricians or all contractors. And so that's what I need the board to discuss and decide on.
Okay, I think in regard to that question, we can probably have a fair discussion, because there's a lot of homes that residential contractors will build that a homeowner may supply the cabinets.
that's correct.
And here they come carrying in a $200,000 cabinet package that we had nothing to do with on our bid. And that would put us over the limit.
The exact same argument I could have with the LLEs and light fixtures. So, I mean, it's the exact same thing across the board. The question is, if that contractor's got a $500,000 license and you're putting in a $200,000 cabinet over there, does that contractor monetarily, should he be doing a job of that size? I mean, that's the whole reason of the monetary limits to begin with. So, and you know this is how they were working around it. The same way with the contractors. You know, the more you can get the owner to do, the less on your license, so the bigger job you can do. So what's happening is you're having smaller contractors doing monster jobs because they're putting it on the owner to furnish the material. And I even see it in the commercial world. You know, they'll go buy all the conduit and wire and light fixtures and everything, and there'll be an LLE license to do $25,000 worth of work. And in my world, that's a $250,000 job.
Mm-hmm.
And I imagine it would be the same thing with the residential contractors. So, I guess, I mean, I'm happy with the LLE.
I see the merits of that.
I do too. I don't know how you enforce it.
But at the same time, an LLE isn't a contractor.
Understood.
And that makes him a contractor, I think, doing it that way.
Which is why I put the electrician change in the definitions, because we had that discussion where by statute, electrician is not considered a contractor. But I think Andy does have a good point that it does in a way single out electricians. I see your point as well, Keith, as to how those materials can affect what that residential contractor can do. But like I said, I think that this was right for discussion point.
To further my argument just a little bit, I've seen homeowners come carrying in some of the most elaborate light fixtures that you've ever seen. And, you know, that's what you're saying there then, is going to affect something we didn't have any plans for. You know, when we put an allowance of $600 on that chandelier, they've come in all of a sudden now and they've bought a $18,000 chandelier.
Well, so you got a little, I wouldn't say common sense, but a little practicality's got to come into this too. you know, an LLE is going to $25,000 limit. So you wire a house for less than $25,000, they're not going to bring in a $16,000 chandler. It's just not going to happen. You have a 10% buffer. So that should, so maybe that's a different conversation, but that really should take care of what we're talking about. Hey, you know, we didn't consider this in our bid. Now all of a sudden the owner wants ceramic tile instead of linoleum or something like that. It's going to be more of that size. I don't think it's going to be half of your bid as a general contractor. It's not going to be half of my bid as an electrical contractor. So that 10% buffer should fix that. And that's written in here already.
Mm-hmm.
And it counts for everybody except for the BC A little r. But you're right, the LLE is not a contractor, but the rule here would affect all licensed people, right?
Yes.
So even though the LLE and LLP are not contractors, if we change it here, it would affect all contractors from
Right.
LLEs all the way up to, you know, BCs.
You okay with that?
I'm fine.
Might not be a big deal from that side.
It's not, I mean, where this really comes into effect is on bid days. When you're pricing something, we never go back and say, okay, what was your final contract amount? As a board, as a licensing board, we never do that. So it's really going to keep the people that should be bidding the work, bidding the work.
Right, so just so I can be clear, what I'm hearing is that we're gonna go with Andy's suggestion to change the rule so it affects all contractors, where they can't bid over their monetary limit. That includes materials provided by owners.
All contractors, including LLEs and LLPs.
Now, that's going to be a rule change, not a legislative change. Is
That's
that
correct.
Okay, when will that rulemaking hearing take place? Do we know?
So what I can do is I can try to push it through by proposed, and if there are people that want to give comments on it, we have to go to rulemaking hearing at that point. But if there's not a lot of pushback on it, it'll go right to the legislature for, GovOps rather, for adoption.
How do our home builder members feel about that?
When you say the proposed, when our meeting is in November, and I can put it on our agenda. Or
Okay.
if
So,
I need to do it sooner than that. then-
so what would happen from here is the board would vote to adopt that language. I would draft it and begin the process of approving it. It'll get posted, and at that point, if there is comments that the public wants to make, they can let us know, and we have to go to rulemaking hearing at that point.
At what point do you think it would be posted?
It would be after your November meeting.
Okay, then can I see a draft before we post it?
Yeah, provide hearing.
Done.
I personally feel like it helps bridge the gap that we now have with the project managers anyway. It's similar. I mean, you know, you do have builders that are licensed at 150,000. Their scope of work for managing this project fits in that. The client buys $300,000 worth of project or worth of materials, and he's building a $450,000 house. And he's going and pulling his permit because his part of it at the permit office is below his license limit. So I think it would be a good positive.
That permit should be invalid because that permit should include the entire value.
That's correct. And one
that
question
puts him over license.
I was going to ask you under new business is, we do hear that a lot. From other builders, and they say when I go to the permit office, because we had the permitting fee issue locally, and we met with Knox County 2 years ago and readjusted fees, because in order to save permit money, they're going in and saying, well, this $800,000 house really only is $550. Well, that doesn't include my 15% fee and my dumpsters and my toilets and are all those items supposed to be included from a legal standpoint? So, I mean, they are convincing the client and the permit office. The permit office has no way to check the value and the cost of that home. That was part of the issue.
Some of them have an automatic value no matter.
Well,
no
that's
matter what.
that's what we
No
did
matter
with
what
Knox
your
County.
cost is, a lot of times their permit value is more than my cost.
Yeah, we did that with Knox County. We actually raised the per square foot minimum because they were just getting thousands, hundreds of thousands a year taken out of their office.
So do we need to vote on this language
Yes,
today?
so vote on the language in 0680-01-.13 subpart 8. And then that's where I'll go from there.
Okay, do I have a motion that we approve that as presented?
I'd like to make that motion.
I'll second.
Motion and second, all in favor? Opposed?
Randy, can I ask a quick question? How is it viewed from your standpoint where I have a license limit of 1.4 right now? Almost every project we build goes over budget, and it's allowances or it's just add-on scope. Or what happens when your $800,000 license limit project ends up at 950, but it was really client-driven and it wasn't known on the front end? And do you ever get that stuff across your table? I guess it's after the fact at that point.
Never see it.
Rarely, if ever, it just goes on the permit. We go back to how much.
Is there
the
penalties
permit
for us in that situation if it did come up or did happen?
That's what just happened.
That's what brought that rule change up?
I can
No,
see if you got in a
That's what this rule change will create, is you'll be in violation.
But yes, when you do projects over your monetary limit, usually we catch it when they come in here to get an increase in their monetary limit, to be honest with
Because they're
you.
requesting it for a
But,
reason.
well, no, they're listing out all the projects they did and they're over
Oh,
their
they're
monetary
already over.
limit. And you're
Gotcha.
like, whoa, how's this work? So
Gotcha.
that's when the civil penalties come into play.
I see it becoming an issue if you get it in a squabble with your homeowner.
That's what I was asking. What do we do in our
So
case?
where can we ding this guy? Oh, hey, look here.
You know, do we stop and say, look, I can't put that fence up in the backyard because
That's
now I'm
what you need
over
to do
my...
at that point in time, then you'll have to go and apply for an increase.
For that individual
Yeah, and it
project.
doesn't take long. We do hardship increases in less than a week. If you'll get it into the
Gotcha.
office,
Okay.
they send it out to a board member signs off, right on out it goes.
You gotta be able to back it up.
With funding.
Sure,
Yeah.
right.
You've got to
You
qualify.
might
By the
be-
financial statement.
You might already be at your top limit.
Is that an increase for just that project or your license in general?
That would be the license in general.
Gotcha, okay.
But it's very important because we get calls now from contractors saying, I just got sick, I sued the homeowner for non-payment, and the judge said they didn't have to pay me because I was considered over my limit and
You're
unlicensed.
qualified to build it.
Yeah,
Sure.
so I get lots of calls from contractors saying, is this right? You know, are they right? I can't get my money. And it is.
But you know your limit. Don't go over it. I mean, that's the bottom line. That's a separate project. You need to complete your project here. If you can't do it, they need to hire somebody else. You know your limit.
Right,
And there's a 10% buffer in there.
There's 10% grace in there.
yeah.
And the other thing is at that point in time, you gotta be honest with the homeowner. And you know, you're putting me over a limit here. And
You're
we're
putting me in
going
a
to
bad
stop
spot.
the project and get everything legal. And, you know, they need to be able to be made known of that. And legitimate people don't have any problem doing that. It's most of the ones that are not legitimate, oh yeah, no problem, we'll just go right on. And then the homeowner, like Reese says, they messed up over here, and we're gonna get it.
Right.
And they'll get you then.
Yeah, that's that unfair competition we're here discussing with you.
I'm sorry, just to go back to the rule, can I get a roll call vote on that, just for process purposes?
Sure.
And you want to start?
Yes. Andy Allen, Knoxville, yes.
Mark Brudd, yes.
Randy Chase, yes.
Reese Smith, yes.
Keith Whittington, yes.
Thank you so much.
All right. We have a budget update.
Yes. This is a copy. Our balance right now for the end of the year is $494,000. The LLE did finish in the red, but that was expected because of the off year. I'm sorry.
The year ends when, Craig?
When's the year end?
July 1st starts the new year. We'll be sending a check to Go Build in the next month or so, or half the 494.
Yay.
Half the 494.
Right.
You know that?
Where are we on the law books?
They are,
They're writing them by hand.
yeah. They have, they're being drafted, but we hope to get them printed as soon as, yeah, this year. That they're in process.
You think we'll have it by the next meeting?
No.
All right, let's try to get the current board, make sure our board members listed are current.
Yes, we do. We want to get all our board members in there. We don't want to list vacancies.
All right, any questions about the budget? Do we need to do anything about that or? The proposed meeting dates, I think Carolyn has those, she's gonna send those out via email.
Right, and then y'all can vote on them in November.
Okay.
And then, you need to vote on the summer suspension. So,
Let me ask you, what's the latest date that we know? Like, we didn't have but 6 or 8 interviews today. When do we actually know that? 2 weeks ago or 2 days ago?
when did
On
you?
Friday.
Okay.
Sometimes they get added at the last minute.
So Dennis, if you want to kind of give, because I know some of the board members haven't heard the details about Denton Quality Construction, and then they can vote on whether or not there should be a summer suspension.
Okay. So we have Denton Quality Construction. They're a licensed general contractor. Name's already out there, so we'll go ahead and put some geographic identity with the licensee as well. It's in this immediate area in Spear County, Gatlinburg, Pigeon Forge. Initial complaint was against the unlicensed entity. So you have a licensed entity, Denton, and you have an unlicensed entity. They work both LLCs or both corporate entities working together. The unlicensed entity, of course, is pulling permits under the licensed entity's license number. So that's problem number one. The other issue is they've built at least one home that has been, that the local codes has issued a stop work order, just based on how this all relates to safety issue at this point. So that initial complaint, then I think sort of the dominoes fell and other homeowners have since filed complaints. I don't think they've been quite as egregious as his initial one, but in any event, you've got still the same unlicensed entity still using the licensed entity's number to pull all the permits, do all the work. So based on that, when we start talking about summer suspension, start talking about danger to the health, safety, and welfare of citizens, whether statewide or whether just in this local area in this case.
And as of right now, there are five open complaints against this licensed contractor.
One was on the report for today, but that was against the unlicensed entity, which we can't summarily suspend an unlicensed entity because there's nothing there to suspend. I believe the residential subcommittee recommended the penalty that I recommend or accepted my recommendation on that. But as far as the licensed entity, the summary suspension would be just to address them working with this unlicensed entity, anything else that they're doing. So we have two options. One, of course, is that we can do it where the license becomes suspended, really just by our internal workings, and then within 7 days, the respondent has an opportunity to be heard. So,
and they'll be heard in an informal conference, so it can be a teleconference where they come and just present their side as to why they should not be summarily suspended until a formal hearing can take place.
And no ALJ has to preside over it. It's all just driven by the board members of the quorum. And the other option, of course, is that we wait until the next meeting, but that, at this point, it's the local codes is just having a hard time keeping these people at bay.
Do these, are we familiar, do these folks know each other? Are they in cahoots? Or is this
Absolutely. One, I mean, the responses have come from the unlicensed owner But I can't, unless there's something else that I'm not aware of, I can't imagine that they're not working.
Didn't you hear that
together.
maybe the licensee has left the state or something?
Well, that was.
That was,
Did you hear that, Kevin?
yes, the codes official said that he thought the licensed contractor left the city. But now, on a couple of the complaints, they did list the licensee, the owner's name on a couple of the complaints as the person they dealt with. And so it's pretty clear he is working on the job some.
Well, if he pulled the permit, then he's legal.
Well, the other guy pulled the permit,
The unlicensed.
the unlicensed, because
But
he
the licensee is who they dealt with.
yes. On a couple of them, they listed him as another person they work with. They listed both names, but there's.
We'll get their attention and they'll come to see us in 7 days and we'll get to the bottom of it.
Yeah, and so the board just needs to decide if it's an immediate threat to the health, safety, and welfare of the public. Vote on summarily suspended, and what would happen is legal would send a notice to Denton that they are summarily suspended.
Probably to their attorney.
Right. They'll have an opportunity to be heard within 7 days of that letter. We'd set up a teleconference, and if they decide to participate in that, they'll explain to you all why they think they should not be summarily suspended.
And this is your recommendation?
Yes.
Okay.
I looked at this because he had the details of the case. And so from there, if you all decide that they should be summarily suspended, they would remain suspended until a full formal hearing can take place with you all in the ALJ there. But the teleconference will be informal. It's just, like I said, just a teleconference where they're speaking to you and explaining why they shouldn't be summarily suspended.
We've done this before, so I'll make a motion that we summarily or proceed with the suspension hearing or process.
All right, we have a motion.
Second.
And a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Sounds good, thanks. Any other new business? I think so.
Motion we adjourn.
All right, let's adjourn. Thanks, everybody.